I'll pop her up. Lilith Dorsey. Hi, Lilith. How are you?
Great. How are you guys
Oh,
doing?
oh, fantastic. Now, I'm just going to pop this very annoying banner out of the background there. Um, so, excuse me as I
Where do
tumble.
we
Where do
start?
we even start
Where
with
do we
all of that?
start? That's just so
Oh,
amazing.
now I noticed that you have been initiated into, is it 3 different types of belief systems?
Yeah, I think that confuses people a lot because, they think I'm like, oh, let's bounce here and there and whatever. But I joined my first tradition, the New Orleans Voodoo, at the Voodoo Spiritual Temple here in New Orleans. I joined them 28 years ago. And then I just sort of had some life circumstances. My daughter passed and I needed some justice work done. So I ended up going to Santera, who was a good friend of mine, and we ended up doing the work and getting the justice that we needed out of the situation. And Haitian Vodou, I was just sort of in this tiny little community in New England in Providence, and I was teaching tarot and astrology, and they said to me, they're like, oh, you're going to love the new minister we got. And I was like, what? Because it was a UU church. I was like, I'm going to love the minister. And it turned out that it was Gro Mambo Bonnie Devlin, who's also a UU minister. She went to Harvard Divinity. And,
Oh, wow.
I just started working with her because she was right there. And it was beautiful because I didn't have anybody close by. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially in the ATRs, that they have to travel a lot. And that's normal. But it was great to have her close by then. And now I'm in New Orleans next to Priestess Miriam. So it's wonderful.
We're very jealous that you're in New Orleans because, as we were saying to you earlier, we were meant to go there. So we had our frightfully good crew that were all going to come over, and we had the best trip planned.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, never mind.
Oh.
But we'll come back. We'll do it again another time.
Yes,
we
yes, please
yes,
do.
we're getting to know
Please
so
do.
many people through these podcasts that we'll have so many people to visit and say hello to when we're there, which is
I
great.
know, I
And they can
know.
tell
I
us all the
can't
good
wait.
places to go.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely, definitely.
Now, look, for our listeners in Australia, because we know that some of them will not quite understand some of the terminology. Now, we know there is Vodou, is that correct?
Yeah,
Voodoo
Vodou.
and
Yes,
Hoodoo.
yes.
So, what is the difference between those 3, just so that they get a gist of what it's all about?
Sure. Vodou is primarily practiced in Haiti, and it's Vodou because that's the Creole word for the religion. And I think the main difference there is that the deities or spirits or energies that they pray to are called Loa, and that basically is just another word for spirit. And in Voodoo, that's what we practice here in New Orleans. I think we sort of embrace the name because we embrace everything that's weird and wild and wacky and funky. And that's sort of what it got turned into when it came from the Caribbean, and it got blended with some of the other traditions that were here. And hoodoo is really more of a folk magic practices all throughout the southern US, primarily practiced by African American or Black people, but also by other people as well.
So, can anybody have a go at these folk magic things from the hoodoo, or?
Pretty much. I think, it was more like, oh, well, this is what the old woman in the swamp told me to do if my foot hurt, or this is what she told me to do if my neighbor was a creep, or something like that. So it was really very practical magic. It was a lot
Yeah.
of herbalism. It was a lot of using what you had at hand. It was really sort of a situational kind of thing, whereas Haitian Vodou and New Orleans Voodoo are more devotional. We have feast days, we have ceremonies, we have initiations, all of these things.
That takes me to a question with regard to the history of all of this and how the Africans came out to America as slaves and how they had to really think about how they could bring their religious practices into their daily life to assist them and help them
And survive.
through this trauma that they were going through. And I heard a podcast where you were explaining some of the things that they did, and it was absolutely fascinating. Could you tell us one or two of the intriguing ways that they would be able to hide this stuff from the people that were enslaving them, yet still be able to practice.
I think one of the first things that people don't realize is that a lot of the Psalms from the Bible were used as prayers and rituals and spells. I think it has to do with the magic of the sound of the words and less what the actual psalm means. But you could use certain psalms for cursing people. You could use certain psalms to bring a lover, that kind of a thing. And this was
We
really
need to find those.
I need those.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us the pages later? We'll sort that out, right?
Okay.
I'll be praying at a lot of people.
A new way to look at the Bible. Yes.
Yes, definitely,
Right, okay.
definitely. And I actually put a lot of them in my love magic book because a lot of them are used for love, so people can find them in there. But I think that, they weren't allowed to have books. If they were allowed to have any books at all, it was just the Bible. So you had to have a creative way of using what you had, and that was one way. And I think it takes it beyond just something that's a Christian textbook. It takes it beyond to like the cosmic resonance of the sound. We know that scientifically certain sounds can produce certain effects, and I think this is what the magic is going on, that by saying this aloud, it will attract these things to you, or it will make certain things more likely to happen because it's attracting these vibes. So that's really where that went. And my other favorite one was that they used to use Catholic statues that were hollow, and you can still get Catholic statues that are hollow today. And they would take the ritual items and the herbs and the, whatever else they were using, and they would put them inside the statue. And then when you had it in your front window, or if you paraded down the street with it, everybody thought you were having a Christian or a Catholic ceremony. And in reality, you knew that the same kinds of things were inside there, and you were still honoring your tradition in some way.
That's very clever.
Very clever.
Yeah, it's weird because I was brought up in the Roman Catholic faith, and there was a lot of fear instilled in me. And I would say the Our Father over and over and over if I was fearful of something, and it gave me solace and gave me peace. And now I've sort of walked away from that faith. I can still say the Our Father and get peace from it, even though I am quite angry with the whole Roman Catholic Church. So I totally understand what you're talking about, the power of the words. It's not necessarily the prayer, but it's the words that give you the solace.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely something to doing a ritual as well as what you're doing when you do the Our Father, I don't know if that's how you do it down there, but, when I was young, you got to bow your head and you got to do these things and everything. So there's kind of a ritual that you get used to, and by the repetition of it, that allows, again, for the magic to happen. It's funny because a lot of times I will ask my godchildren or my students to do something over and over again, and they're just like, why? I don't understand. We've already done it. And what they don't get is the repetition allows your mind to sort of unlock other realms. I know I sound like a kook now, but
Oh no, you're our sort of kook.
We are your people.
All right, yay!
I also love that you were talking about how the spiritual side of all of this and doing the rituals and saying the words and everything that the slaves did when they first came over was a healing method for the trauma, and that spirituality is often a healing that happens within trauma. And I've always said to people that, if you're rich and your life is fantastic and wonderful, normally you don't need spirituality. You don't even go there. It's not a thing, because your life is full and you have everything. And yet those that have gone through the worst of the worst seem to have that part of them opened up that says there must be more than this, and I need to find it, and my soul needs to find solace in this. And I loved that you said that, because it so rings true for me as well. Yeah. Really
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, I think there's a way, especially, trauma really messes you up. And that's not a reductionist, that's a fact. And there's ways it can change your brain physiology, it can change your whole like body chemistry and your whole like just well-being. So I think that we need to find ways to sort of get in touch with that and heal that and move forward. And as I just mentioned, a lot of that can be through repetition, ritual. One of the things that I like to remind myself is that we get another family in my tradition, and we get godparents, and they're hopefully better than our real parents were. If our real parents were crappy and my real parents were not great, hopefully my mother's not watching this. My father's dead, but she could have done better. She knows that.
I think all of us can say we could have done better.
Yeah, really, definitely. So by having these alliances, by having, extra brothers and sisters and parents and a whole extended family, it allows you to have a sense of community that I think is lost a lot of times, especially in modern day.
Absolutely.
We have a question here for you from Elizabeth. Apart from saying you're looking fabulous,
Thank you, Elizabeth.
where does root magic fit in?
I think that root magic comes in with all of it. Every single, different culture where, Haitian Vodou has its own special roots that you can get from Haiti. And a lot of that, even though the religion has been practiced there and they had their freedom back in the late 1700s, there's still a lot of oppression that went on there. So it's really just coming back now that a lot of these herbs are coming back. A lot of them are healing herbs and things like that I'm really happy to say you can find out about now, whereas 20 or 30 years ago, you couldn't really find out about this information. And the same holds true for Santo or Lukumi. I am from New York originally. I lived there most of my life, and there's a lot of botanicas or ritual stores there where you can still go and get fresh herbs. And everybody goes on Friday morning and they walk out with armloads full of fresh herbs, make ritual baths, stuff like that. It's wonderful. It's really such a beautiful thing to see, and it's really kind of like a pilgrimage almost, because people come from all over New York City to go to these places, like just this small area, to get this stuff every Friday morning. So it's nice. Wow. But and even in hoodoo, it was, okay, well, go out, find this root. If we use something like High John the Conqueror root, for example, which has a really long history, you can use it for protection, you can use it for healing, you can use it for justice, all of these things. It's actually a relative of the morning glory, and it's a big, gnarly looking, kind of ugly looking root. And people would carry that when they needed justice or protection and other things like that. I think it's also interesting, because it's related to morning glory, and that has all these crazy psychedelic properties, morning glory. So in a way, you've got this thing where it's kind of magic and it allows you to access other realms.
And I have to just explain to the Australians that are watching, when we're talking about roots, okay, we're talking about plants, my loves. We've just got to be careful with us Aussies, because that can mean something completely different. Same with morning glory. So I'm just putting them straight. That's all to do with plants, my friends. Thank you.
Is it dirty? Oh my gosh, that's exciting.
We'll explain it to you later.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
The other thing I found really interesting is you're talking about the blending of religions, and particularly the one that got me was the Irish. And you were talking about the sacred places in Ireland with St. Bridget's Well, we call it. I think you call it Brigitte.
Mama Brigitte?
Yeah, Mama Brigitte. That's it. And we actually went to Ireland last year, and we found one of these little glens that was St. Bridget's Well. And we walked onto it over this little bridge and into this location, and you just felt it. It just went right down to your core. It was amazing.
Yeah, I shed tears.
Yeah, we did. We had a moment.
It was just, yeah. And
I understand completely. I've been to Ireland 3 times, so I know all about the power of sacred Ireland. And I think, especially in the 1800s, there were a lot of Irish that came over to New Orleans to work here. And I think there was, because they were the same socioeconomic status as some of the Black people that were here, that, the Black people that were here were worshiping Mama Brigitte from Haiti, and they were worshiping Brigitte or Saint Bridget. And it was like, hey, what's the same about these two things? Is there any place where those two energies meet? And I think they really celebrated that. And this is something that we see a lot more today. I've even had people argue with me that there was no such thing in Haiti, but I've had a lot of Haitians tell me that, yes, there's always been a Mama Brigitte. She's always been an ancestor. She's always been this kind of ancient foremother that allows us to get what we need out of life. And I think that's just such a beautiful concept that, we can all trace our ancestry back to, they've done it scientifically, back to this one woman. So this is like the knowledge of all those women going back throughout time, and by honoring Mama Brigitte, we can access that.
Yeah.
And I love that you call her Mama rather than Saint.
Yeah.
It really brings her down to us, and it's a sort of an all-encompassing word.
It's a comforting,
yes,
comforting
it is.
word.
Yeah, she's
It's
ours.
like Lady Tamara, we call her Mama T. Yes, and we're going to hide in her suitcase and come visit. Now, there was a great story that because I've been listening to your new book, it's your latest book that's out, the Orisha's Goddesses and Voodoo Queens. Let's just tell people basically what that book is about, and then there was a story in there that I'd love you to retell if you could.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, just
Hang on.
one more moment. Bring it back up.
Yeah, put it up there.
That's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah.
So I know it sounds like such a cliche, but I really wanted to write this book my whole life. And I think that it was a struggle because it wasn't necessarily something everybody was really ready to hear and get behind. And now that I've finally written it, I'm just so happy. It's a bestseller. Everybody really likes it. I'm really proud of it. And it was the book I wanted for my daughters because I wanted them to have something that was positive about Black women, about Black history, about Black, goddesses, for lack of a better word. They're not really goddesses. They're Orisha and Loa, which are something completely different. So anybody who's out there, don't get angry at me because I said that.
They'll be male.
But, it has to do with guiding forces in our lives, magical forces in our lives, presences in the universe that we can tap into. And it's really a celebration of the divine feminine and how we can empower ourselves by learning herstory when we've had history shoved down our throats for so many years. And
herstory. I love that.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. There's so many things. I mean, I was always really a big history person, and I had a lot of really wonderful female history teachers even. And there's people in this book like Queen Nanny and Annie Christmas and stuff like that I never learned about. I never even found anything about. And even now it's hard to find stuff about them. But they were these powerful women that actually did exist and did some really wonderful things for their people, really stood up for women, stood up against oppression. And the fact that I could put that out there and make them more known to people is wonderful to me.
And I also like how you were saying that you brought the goddesses who normally take a back seat and aren't terribly well known, you've brought them forward so that people can learn about them. Because I know that you gave me a task, it was ages ago when I was doing a year and a day, I think, to find a goddess that I resonated with. And it was all the popular ones. There was really hard to find some that were not mainstream.
No, it's true. There's really been sort of a short list of goddesses. When I've been doing this a long time. Like I said, I've been doing witchcraft and pagan events for at least 25 years now. And we'd go and we'd get to an event and people would be like, ISIS, rah, 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 like, okay, we got ISIS, we got Ra. All right, now is there anything else going on here, and that it really, I loved it. I grew up watching the ISIS TV show, for anybody who remembers that. She had all these little magic things and would do all this stuff. But there is more out there, and it was really suppressed by the patriarchy. And I know now I sound like one of those blah, 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 but it's true. They literally went in and smashed the sacred items and got rid of sacred texts. And it's just been a matter of reconstructing it for those of us who care and really want to know the truth.
Yeah. Now, the story that I was referring to in there was hang on, I've got to find it here. The story of the menstruating women who took over the world.
Oh, yeah.
I heard that and I went, oh, I love this.
You actually get that story. It's not just an African story. You get a lot of stories about menstruating women taking over the world. And that's one of the reasons that they usually get separated, which a lot of women sort of get angry about and think it's sort of anti-female to have to separate them. But in all the cultures that they do that, it's because that time is so powerful. And in African traditional religion, you're so powerful at that time, you have to focus on yourself, because as women, we spend so much time caring for children and parents and partners, and it's almost part of who we are. So when we have our, menstruation or moon time, we're supposed to focus on ourselves and not do for others and not do for the community. We're just supposed to have that kind of self-care, which I think is actually beautiful when you think about it like that. But the story, it's an Oshun story, an Orisha Oshun story, and it's about how that there were these menstruating women that in the story are called witches, and not in a good way, mind you.
Yep.
They just wander off into the woods, and they get so angry, and they're so powerful, they decide they're going to destroy everything, and all the other Orisha try and stop them. Like Shango goes, and he's the Lord of Fire, and he tries, drumming for them and he's so charming, and he tries to charm them, and that doesn't work. And then Ogun goes, and he is the Orisha for war, and he's got his machete, and he threatens them and tells them to stop, and they just screw off, get out of here, we're not listening to you anymore. And Oshun comes, and she, in addition to being the Orisha of love, is the Orisha for dance and the Orisha for honey. So she just puts this sweet honey on her hips, and she does a little dance, and they're just so enthralled with her beauty and her sensuality and her captivating energy that they stop, and they're like, what? Can we follow you? So they give up the idea of taking over the world. And now these witches are said to be, under the auspices of Oshun.
I love it.
Somehow I do wish they'd taken over the world.
I know. I love it though, because it shows how, you could go in with, all these traditionally masculine skills of charm and schmoozing, and that didn't work, or, brute force, and that didn't work. But the Oshun charms is what really worked in that situation. So just because we aren't necessarily physically the strongest out there or excelling in traditional male-dominated ways, we still got skills,
Now, people are just asking where they can buy your books, so I have that there. But if you go to Lilith's website, there is a link there to the book. So that's the website. That one's probably easier for you to find. Now, there was... you're talking about the power of the internet and the importance of initiation, and how we're finding here there's a lot of people who will go, oh yes, I'm a witch, and they're 17.
Oh yeah.
And it's, yeah. You want to tackle that one?
I'm going to get into so much trouble. The thing is that everyone finds their path in a different way and at different times, and they come at it from different directions. But part of what we find as we grow older is the importance of a particular pathway that leads you down the right path, with the right people teaching and the right information being shared. And often that is the hidden part of all of this. You have to struggle to find it, and part of the struggle is that it isn't that easy. It has to be slightly hard for you to really understand what you are learning. And it's like when you're ready. The teacher will appear when you're ready, when you've done your tasks, when you've done that part of the work that says, okay, you've put in enough effort to really learn now. And we come back to this topic of initiation and why initiation is important. And maybe you can sort of enlighten from your knowledge and what initiation has taught you to the value of actually being initiated and doing it right.
Yeah. I mean, all of the ATRs or African traditional religions have initiation in them. And to the point of there is no self-initiation. You can't just walk out and say, oh, I'm worshiping Oshun, I'm doing spells for Oshun. It's just not done like that. And part of the reason is because it's been done another way for, let's see, if we go back, I mentioned before the Orisha Shango, he's the earliest one that we can find in the written record. He goes back to 400 BCE, so that's 2,400 years ago. So it's been done this way for at least 2,400 years. So I appreciate people trying to reinvent the wheel, but it's been done the same way for 2,400 years, and there's a reason it's done that way.
Absolutely.
I think too that it's just you need somebody who's got your back. You know what I mean? Witchcraft and magic is not make it up as you go along. I kind of feel like, and I have a reputation as an angry priestess for this, but people who tell me that they just make it up people who tell me that they just make it up. I feel like when a 5-year-old comes to you with a mud pie that they've just made in the backyard and go, do you want to eat this? I put this together, and I'm like, yeah, yum, yum, sweetie, but it's not real. I'm not really going to put it in my mouth. You're just pretending. And that's because they're little and they don't know, like they don't necessarily know how to use the oven. They don't know the difference between flour or sugar or salt or the rest of it. I always bring it back to cooking, because cooking, yeah, sure, you could go in the kitchen and just make stuff up, but if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to be nasty and somebody might get really sick. And it's the same kind of thing. You have to know, oh, well, I can't use this particular herb or this particular thing. I can't burn sage in front of this woman if she's menstruating or pregnant, because that could cause, if she's lactating or pregnant, because that could cause her milk to dry up or her to lose the baby. Like, you got to know these things about herbs. You have to know these things about oils. A lot of oils you can't even put on your skin. So there's a whole bunch of stuff to know that you have to learn. And it's better to learn from somebody who's right there. In our tradition, before you get your first initiations, it's nice if you talk to spirits or hear spirits, but we don't know what you're talking to. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's like, you don't just leave your door open. I live in a city. I've almost always lived in a city. I lock my door. I don't just leave it open to whoever wants to come in. And by not having initiation, you're leaving your spiritual door open to whoever wants to come in. And they could be helpful. They could be harmful. They could be wacko. They could be whatever. So why wouldn't you want to have an initiation to help you do this? To go back to cooking, my daughter went to Cornell Restaurant School, which is Ivy League restaurant school here in the States. And she came home and I had cooked my whole life. She showed me how to cut an onion. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm, 30, whatever. No, she was in college. So I must have been 40 years old. And I was like, I've been cutting an onion wrong all these years. And there's a right way to cut an onion. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not? I got it done. But why am I making it hard for myself? I could go and learn from the right people how to do it. And then it'll be easy. There's always going to be more stuff to learn. So I don't understand. I think it's just anti-intellectualism, really, or something. People don't want to have rules or whatever, but you can get in trouble that way.
Oh, I love that. That's just a brilliant explanation. Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
There is a lot of self-professed experts in various fields who want to teach you, but they actually don't have the background or have never been initiated, and it worries me sometimes where people are getting their information from.
Definitely. For those of us who've been around for a while, we realize that, a lot of even the people that we thought had information 20 or 30 years ago were, crap. And so we've thrown that out, just honestly, it was crap. And
say for what it is.
Yeah, it was crap. It was.
Yep.
So where is it coming from? That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Ego.
And as I said before, just because somebody else did it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I have a friend who's a very popular author, and she said on social media, she's like, oh, well, I got to hurry up and write 100 spells this weekend. And I thought, what? Like, I mean, if there's a spell in my book, I've tried that spell. I have tried that spell with my godkids. I've tried it myself. I've tried it under several different circumstances to see, is it going to work? Is it going to work if I do it somewhere else? You guys are in a different part of the world. Is it going to work if somebody in a different part of the world does it? Is it going to work if I do it in the morning or at night, or a man does it, a woman, a gender neutral person? Like, what are the circumstances that this spell is going to work best? And I don't think you can just go make that stuff up the same way like with the recipes, like, is it going to taste better if it comes from someone who really knows what they're doing and it's been tested, or is it going to, or we just all making it? I don't think they really want magic to happen. That's it. That's
I think it's slightly disrespectful as well to the origins of all of this, and where it originated from, and what the purpose and the intentions were to begin with. It's all about show, and the thing with all of this spirituality is it's not about show at all. That's the absolute reverse of what it should be. It is something so personal and so private, that just putting it all out there for everyone, it kind of really diffuses what the whole thing is about. That's kind of what I think anyway. Yeah.
No, I agree. There's all these social media witches that take pictures of your altar or your spells or something like that. Like, I was taught if you take a picture of it, then you've automatically neutralized it. Like, there's all these things, native culture, indigenous culture about, taking a picture of it traps it in a way that you don't want it to be trapped. So if you see any pictures of my stuff, it's either before we start or after we're done. Like, I would never take a picture of a live altar.
Wow.
That's brilliant. Anyone listening to that piece of information, please take it in, because that is super important. Absolutely.
I like how you also mentioned when you are looking at being initiated or being taken into a group, that you should research your godparents to make sure that they are who they say they are. It's I think due diligence, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. And that part's a lot easier now with the internet. You can find out somebody's reputation very easily. And I think that it's helpful because it is like a family. You're kind of stuck with them. I know a lot of people who initiate and then they turn around and they're like, oh, I don't like these people. And I'm like, well, there's not really anything you can do about it, and that's happened to me in witchcraft as well. People have told me there's certain initiations that they've taken and then they wanted to undo it. None of this stuff is about undoing it. So you should really trust those people, and you should trust them with your life. I mean, I've certainly had to have situations where I had to tell my godparents some pretty sketchy things, and I always make fun of my godkids because I was doing an interview once, and thank God it didn't show up, but I was doing the interview on my phone, and one of them texted me, I think that damn bastard gave me an STD. So and now moving on to the next question, and I was just like, wow, okie dokie, but it could happen, and they're fine now. And you have to have somebody that you feel okay saying that to.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you have that situation, you're going to need help with that situation. So you have to have somebody that you trust and you really feel comfortable with 100% that you could just say that to. Or say anything.
Same in the paranormal field as well. We keep saying to people, because that's how I sort of came into all of this, through the paranormal side of things and being a ghost hunter, so to speak. We keep saying that you need to, before you join a team, work out who these people are. Can you trust them with your life, literally?
And your secrets and the things that you think are so important. I was listening to Brene Brown, and she was talking about trust, And, for her, trust was being able to share with someone, something that is so really terribly important to you that, once you share it, you give a part of yourself to that person and you want them to be able to also hold on to that in a respectful way. And it is all about trusting who is teaching you and how you are moving on, and being able to share the problems and issues that you are coming across, and knowing that that isn't going to be spread over 1,000 other people because of gossip and ego and all of that sort of stuff. Yes.
Yeah. I have another question here from you, from this very strange person.
Hello, Tony.
Hi, Tony. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
We love Tony. She is just absolutely gorgeous.
She's adopted us.
What a beautiful soul.
I love Tony too.
Yeah. Do you find yourself at all bringing any of your traditional witchcraft beliefs from your past into the present voodoo practice?
Sure. I mean, usually what I do, if somebody, I do a lot of psychic readings and like that for people. And if it's something that they need to have spell work done, what I will do is go through my entire list of everything that I know that might work. So I'll go through my traditional witchcraft spells and herbs. I'll go through the traditional voodoo ones, hoodoo ones, whatever I have, whatever I can think of, crystals, which aren't necessarily used in voodoo or vodou very often. I'll go through that. I go through whatever I need to do to help somebody if I'm giving them a consultation or doing spell work for them. Definitely. And I think a lot of my god kids do come from traditional witchcraft, either BTW or Wicca or, other practices. And they bring that with them. So it's always that we have that other layer of knowledge on top of the practices that we're doing. So if there's something that they feel that they want to bring with them from traditional witchcraft, then they'll use that. If there's something that I feel like might be helpful if we're doing a certain ceremony or something that from traditional witchcraft, then yeah, sure, we'll use that.
So if anyone that's watching has a question for Lilith, please put it up so that we can ask her before we are finished. But maybe we go on to the new book.
Oh, yes. You've got a new book coming up, Water Magic. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was so weird. I was not expecting to write water magic at all. I'm not a really watery person. I'm an Aries with a Libra rising and a Libra moon. So I'm like all fire and air, and there's very little water going on in there. So when they asked me to write it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, well, okay. I mean, I can do it, sure. But I don't even like getting wet. I don't even like swimming or anything. Just like, what? So,
too much effort.
No, it's just too much. It's too much, But when I thought about it, it really did make sense, because I did a documentary about New Orleans voodoo back in 2004, right before Katrina, called Bodies of Water, and how the water that you're next to affects your spiritual practice. Here in New Orleans, we have the Mississippi. People say the Mississippi makes you tipsy. It makes things slower, lighter, kind of like you're already drunk even before you have that hurricane over on Bourbon Street, that you're already kind of floating. And there's a little bit of magic in New Orleans that everybody can feel. And people say that's because of the river, because of the water. It's kind of like they say that in Ireland too. If you drink the water, you're going to come back. Like if you drink the water in New Orleans, they say
we drank the water.
Yeah, there, right? I know, I did too. Yay! And I've already been back to Ireland twice. So
you drank the water
in Ireland.
Oh, in Ireland.
Yeah,
in
I
Ireland.
turned on that tap and guzzled.
Yes. So, but I think that, yes, I do recognize that most, our bodies are 60% water, our hearts and our brains are even more than that of water. The planet is mostly water. So there's water everywhere. It's like we really can't escape it. And the water magic book was just it's almost an encyclopedia of water magic. It's everything that you can think of about water magic. It's every different kind of water, glacier water or rainwater or storm water or hurricane water or pond water, like all of those magically, how those are all going to be different, all the different crystals that are associated with water, all the different herbs that are associated with water, all the different mythological creatures that are associated with water, all the animals that are associated with water, like everything that you can think of about water is in that book.
Wow.
I'm surprised it's not longer. definitely.
And do you think that it would do well cross-culturally with any sort of spiritual practice?
Yeah, I think there's stuff in there from almost every culture. You were mentioning British well. I talk about all the different British wells in Ireland, the Kildare, and all the rest of them, all the other holy wells. It was also really nice for me because it was a collaborative effort, I think, more than any of my other books. So there's a chapter in there from my friend, Witch Dr. Utu, who does a lot of magic up near Niagara Falls in Canada with the falls, with the indigenous tradition and the dragons of the falls there. So he wrote a chapter. Another friend of mine who's a linguist wrote a chapter about the historical origins of water, which I thought was really fascinating. A friend of mine who's a Taino shaman wrote a chapter about Taino magic and mythology connected to the water. So it really does cover all of those things. And it was so nice for me to have, all these people coming in and sort of helping me with it in that way.
Wow.
And people can find a link to that on your website, is that correct?
Yes.
Where they can pre-order that?
Yes.
And also, Blessed be Lady Tamara, thank you for joining us. Merry meet. I'm learning. She'll know what that's about. I had something I was going to ask and it's completely gone. I remember you mentioning something about it's all well and good to read books and do all that sort of thing, but it's actually very hard to reach that deep spiritual connection just by reading a book. You actually have to submerge yourself in it.
Do it.
Yeah. There's a Nigerian saying you can't get awo from a book, or you can't get spiritual knowledge from a book. So you get facts from a book, you get information from a book, but it's not that spiritual transformation process, kind of what we were talking about with initiation, but it comes from the sacred energy of actually being in the place. We have a concept called Ashe, which people are really big about shouting now all the time, Ashe, but it means, it can mean so be it. So people kind of say it the same way that you would say amen. And for those of you who are ADF druids out there, you say Bishe at the end of things. That's where it came from, the foundations of ADF and druidism. They used Bishe because we use Ashe. So it's sort of like a prayer at the end of things. But what it really means is a universal life force or an energy that's present in all things. So everything has Ashe. I mentioned before the Orisha Oshun. She's the Ashe of the river. So if you want to get in touch with Oshun, yes, read my book, read all the posts on my blog about Oshun. But if you really want to get in touch with her, just go to your closest river or get some river water and see what it feels like to have that in your hand. See what it feels like to, put that on your chest, to wash your hair with it, just to have that around you. Or to go to the river and dip your toes in it, see what that feels like. And because that's where the sacred energy is. So it's all about it's not this intellectual process. It's, as much as I could talk about it for the rest of my life and not stop, what it really is going and finding that sacred energy in the place, in the actual place.
I suppose it's a little bit like trying to describe to someone what snow feels like. You can only tell them so much through a book, so actually until they touch it and feel it that they understand what the words mean.
And it's going to be something different for each person. You know what I mean? It's going to be, one person is, like I just said, I don't really like water, so that's going to be a little unpleasant for me no matter what. But I like fire. If I'm in front of a campfire, you have to stop me from poking it and sticking my hands in there and all this other stuff.
Yeah. So we've got Sandra who said that they've tried to find certain items for their spells in stores and things, but can't find them. Are you able to substitute?
It's hard to say. Because like you were saying with the initiation, I think part of the spell is finding the ingredients. Right. Now, that said, don't set out to try and pick a spell that's got some easy ingredients. You know what I mean? There's more than one, the same way there's more than one recipe, there's more than one spell. I have a godson, and he was trying to do a spell that included civet, which is actually like musk expelled from cats and, whatever. It's horrendously expensive, and they barely sell it anywhere anymore.
Yeah.
So I was like, why'd you pick the spell with the civet in it?
Chase the cats around.
One with something easier or cheaper in it,
Yeah.
that's good. Sometimes you can do things like there's a cologne we have called Bay Rum that's been around for quite a long time. I have known people who will get actual pieces of bay and stick it in rum. That's not the same thing, but because
Yeah.
it's bay in rum and the words are the same, there's
Yeah.
a weird magical thing where it can sometimes work the same that way.
Yeah, a bit of sympathetic magic.
Do you know what? It's actually hard to get Florida water here.
That's interesting. That's interesting because I've tried to make it. I know there are a lot of, companies out there that do make it, smaller people that make it, but I like the classic one. I like the one that's been around since 1811. That's the one my great grandmother used, and that one I think really works best. So, I mean, you could try making
We'll have
it,
to
like I
find some of
said.
that. If you
Yeah.
know a good source, then we'll buy some.
Yeah, right. I don't know a good source in Australia. Oh no.
No, everything I looked up, it had to come from overseas.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Lauren asks, how did you discover your gifts?
Oh, okay. I think I always felt magical a little bit. My parents named me Lilith. I know that sounds weird, but they did. So I kind of always felt a little bit like something else was going on there, goddess-wise, to start out with. And I'm of a certain age. I grew up with all those witch shows, Bewitched and all of that stuff. So and like I said, the ISIS TV show. So I always had this somewhere in my head, this knowledge of witchcraft and spellcraft and powers and all of those kinds of things. I was constantly blinking my eyes and trying to wiggle my nose and all of that. I would cast spells so everyone would leave me alone and stuff when I was little. So I grew up doing all of that kind of stuff, just sort of making it up on my own until I found somebody who would really teach me. It's funny now being a wiser author because I remember being so hungry for knowledge. And at that time when I was young, there were really only two places for magic books in New York City, and that was The Magical Child and Wiser. They both had really big magical texts, and they would have all these, I would just get so excited as a little person. They would have all these old ancient books in the back with this tiny print that you weren't allowed to touch. And I think I even got thrown out of the Wiser store when I was young for trying to touch those books when I was about 12. And I was like, I'll show you, I'll come back and I'll be an author one day. And hey, look, I totally did that. That's so cool. But yeah.
They gave you a goal.
I know they did. Revenge is a beautiful goal. I was thinking that.
It is. There is something very wonderful though about bookstores that just have that spiritual base. I remember when we went to England, to London, and there are two really big
Watkins.
bookstores there, and it's like a child.
Atlantis,
you're 12 again, and you're looking through the window, and all of those titles, and you go, "I want it all."
I know.
everything.
It's so magical. It's so magical. Yes. But yes, I started out a little witch trying to do spells for whatever I needed. I'm going to do a spell so I don't have to study, and I passed the test, I would just do whatever,
Yeah.
I used to get my grandmother's perfumes and mix them all into a little container, and I was making a magical potion. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just needed to do it.
Yeah.
And then I'd go and anoint myself.
Yes.
I like that.
Bewitched has changed a lot of women. I think it influenced so many women and men. Yeah.
So we've got a question there from Clarissa. How do you handle a block?
A block. I'm not sure what they mean by a block.
Can you give us a little bit more information about that, Clarissa?
I'd say when they're stuck.
When they're stuck, and they can't do some kind of magic?
Yeah.
Well, I would question why you want to do that magic. I know there are a lot of famous witches out there that even put something in their spell about, oh, well, if this isn't supposed to be, may this spell not work. Well, as far as I'm concerned, what's the point of doing the spell if you're going to put that in there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that just gives you a very convenient out, that whatever. But what I usually do, I sort of reverse engineer it. I do a reading before I do any kind of spell work to see what needs to happen and what are the consequences of me getting this thing, and I talked about this a lot when I did the Love Magic book, but I had a friend who knew someone who did every love spell they could think of to get this person to be their partner. And then they did get the person to be their partner, and then both of them died of AIDS within 6 months. So it was like, oh, geez, maybe there's a reason that there's a block there. That's what I would suggest, that there would be a reason that there's a block to your magic. And it's not about, it's about being where you need to be. And I heard you say something like that earlier, not about being on the right path for you. And that's what I think is one of the reasons that we find blocks, because we're trying to go somewhere that's not the right place for us. We might get stuck on a certain house or a certain job or a certain partner, and there could be a better house or a better job or a better partner, 2 minutes down the road, but you don't see that if you're fixated on this one particular thing. So I would say expand your mind that maybe whatever it is you're asking isn't really the best thing for you, and there's something even better out there. And it's a hard thing to admit, because in a way it's sort of really relinquishing control over what you think should happen in the situation. It's not saying you don't deserve a house or a job or a partner or whatever it is you want, but you don't necessarily get the one that you think is the right one, because the universe might be trying to give you a better one.
Clarissa has just
clarified there.
Yeah, clarified. She was driving, poor darling. I think she had to pull over to write more. So from there, I should rephrase that so I have felt very magical when I lived in Alaska, but now when I'm back in Oklahoma, I don't feel the magical part of me like I used to. That makes sense. So it's like a block. So she's changed. Yeah, she's changed her living circumstances, and she must have left a part of her in Alaska, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's hard. I was mentioning before about the physical character of the land that's around you, and Oklahoma is very different than Alaska. And just adjusting to the circumstances, adjusting to the move. I mean, I just moved. Moving's the fourth most traumatic thing after like divorce and death and like, bleh, well, dead. I mean, if I'm dead, I'm dead. I don't even know, I mean, whatever. I got other problems if that's, so, but I think that the moving's up there on the list. So being in a different space is hard to readjust. I would suggest just reconnecting in whatever way is right for you, if that makes sense. We were talking before about rituals. If there were rituals that you did in Alaska, see if you can do those same rituals in Oklahoma. Something I'm not all about grounding, because I don't necessarily think in an up, down, left, right kind of way. I'm more about centering. And I think that if you do something to center yourself, to make sure that you're centered and you're together, it doesn't matter where you travel, that you can sort of keep yourself intact.
Now we're coming to the end, Lilith, but what I would love you to do is to talk about some of your books and what are the main ideas behind those books. Anyone that might like to buy any of your books, what do you recommend for them?
All of them.
Let's see. Okay. So, well, anybody who's interested in cooking, because I've been talking about cooking, I have a tiny cookbook out there that people can get called the African American Ritual Cookbook. And that just has recipes that from each of the traditions that we've been talking about. It also has some really good ancestor recipes in there. It talks about some basics like setting up a ritual kitchen, which I think is really important. Even if you're not a foodie or somebody who really likes to cook like I do, you're still going to be in your kitchen, even if it's just making toast or cereal or whatever. So having that as the sacred hearth and sort of reviving that as the sacred hearth is really important. And I talk about how to do that in that book. My book, Love Magic, people, I think, wanted it to be this thing that I was talking about where, I can get any partner I want, and it's really more focused on self-love. It's focused on keeping peace and harmony and happiness within the family and the home. So, I mean, there's definitely love spells and stuff like that in there, but it's more about bringing the best person for you to you and attracting that kind of energy and healing yourself so that you can welcome that energy when it does show up. So those are things I think a lot of people struggle with when they've had problems in that area. It also contains a ton of aphrodisiac recipes and herbs and things like that. There's also a lot of herbs in Orisha's Goddesses and Voodoo Queens. There's a lot of mythology in there. I think anybody who really wants to learn more about all of the ATRs, African traditional religions, be it Haitian Vodou or Santo Lukumi or, Candomblé or any of these, really would do well to pick up that book, because it does give you some of the ritual stories, patakis. It gives you some of the herbs. It also, something that I was really happy to be able to do was it gives like pop culture things out there. Whenever I mention, some of these groups like Oshun, which is a music group out of New York City, or Ibiji, which is a musical group, two sisters out of France that have a beautiful song called Take Me to the River that they sing for Oshun that everybody seems to
I'll
love.
have to look that up.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's beautiful. I saw them do it live in Brooklyn last year. It was so amazing. Because like all of these, now I'm going to sound like an old fart, but all of these young millennials, like it's not just going to a concert anymore. And I've been to a lot of concerts. I was a deadhead. It's more of like a full sensorial experience. You know what I mean? There's screens and there's music and there's costumes and there's incense and smoke. And it's just like so fantastic.
And you mentioned Beyonce in that book as well.
Yes, I do. Beyonce, and because she's really done a lot lately, especially for bringing up these sort of things that were evocative of Oshun. And, when she got pregnant with the twins, everybody was like, oh, here's more Oshun, because the legends are about how Oshun has had twins. So she's definitely kind of bringing that to the forefront.
She has a new movie out as well. I saw a clip of it on TV, and it's just all of these amazing images of women. It's crazy. It's beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful. And there's definitely some Oshun things going on in there. I did get to see pieces of it too. It's just so amazing. So amazing. Yeah,
and
yeah.
of course, water magic, which we've been talking about.
Oh yes, water magic. So yeah, that's, like I said, it's going to be a series. So water magic is the first one. It's by Llewellyn, so it'll be coming out in October, I believe. But it's definitely everything you would ever want to know about water magic. So
wow,
if
and
you
you're going to
consider
do the other
yourself a
elements
water
as well.
What?
You're going to be doing the other elements as well. You're going to go through.
There's
fire
other
magic
people are doing the other elements.
Oh,
Estrella Taylor is doing air magic, and I believe it's all women, which I think is beautiful. Heather Green, my editor at Llewellyn, came up with it. So I think there's an Australian woman doing one. I don't know who. But yes, I do remember somebody telling me that I think one of them is written by an Australian woman. Yep.
We'll have to search that person out.
We will.
I know.
We'll have to get onto Llewellyn and ask.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have kept you for an hour.
Thank you so much.
And it's gone so quickly. Thank you so very, very
Oh, it
much,
was wonderful.
Lilith.
Thank you so much. This was a blast. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody in Australia on a vlog before, so yay.
We're real.
Yay.
We're not the imagination of just the land down under that seems to be a fantasy for
the
many
flat
people.
earthers.
Flat earthers that say that we don't exist.
We don't exist.
Tweety.
We're not real. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you today, and everyone, I thoroughly recommend getting some of Lilith's books. I've been going through the Orisha's Goddesses and Voodoo Queens. It is so easy and understandable. It's just pitched at the normal person to understand. So I highly recommend it. So yeah, thank you. So if you can just stay there a second, and we'll pop you out of the live feed. And we'll say goodbye now to all of our beautiful people. Thank you for joining us. Please subscribe to Spirit Talk Australia, and make sure that you share this interview around so people can learn. We're here to educate.
And we have our next speaker already organised, and she will be up. It's the beautiful Morgana, who lives in the Netherlands. And we will be speaking to her very soon. So catch us over the next few months as we bring you more amazing people to share their spirituality with you. Thanking our beautiful patroness, Lady Tamara, Mama T, for being able to allow us to be her spokeswomen and do this and share it with Australia.
All right. Blessed be everyone. Bye.
Bye.